But getting rich was easy. Then came the great tsunami, an 80-year crash. Back then, I remember I had tens of millions of dollars in equity and millions of dollars in my stock portfolio. But today, like other developers, my stock portfolio is seriously diminished. And on the development deals, the mortgage on it is worth more than the real estate. In other words, I'm what you might call today upside down. I'm an upside down developer. Now, and let me say that since 1980 up to today, I've done a couple $1 billion in deals. And I say at least a couple billion because Motor City Casino was $900 million by itself. And I would say I've probably done about $1.2 billion, $1.3 billion since then. So it's been a great run. And now we have this great crash. Now some people might say, well, gee, that's a tragedy. But not to me, because I've been to this movie before. So I've consolidated my management once again, cleaned off my desk. But this time, the feast is bigger and greater, and the deals are fabulous. Once every 80 years, something like this happens. Last time this happened was 1929. It was the stock market, and it was rising costs of stocks and too much debt. This time the same thing. Real estate values shot up too high, too much debt. But let's put this thing in perspective. This is an opportunity that you have, this once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to create more wealth than you ever had, even if you have no money, even if you have no cash, no collateral, or no credit. Now, how can I possibly create all of this wealth, Mr. Strather, if I don't have one of those 3 C's? Because I'm going to teach you skills. And you don't have to have a master's degree. It's simple kind of things that you can read and learn and practice. Now, it's going to require your involvement. It's going to require you to read it and do it. Now, that part I can't force you to do. But I can tell you and show you and give you examples of what I've done and what is possible. That if you listen and you read and you undertake this seriously, you can create a lot of wealth for yourself. I was listening to some guy who said, after 1980, over the next 7, 8 years, he created over $1 billion, and he was selling books. I said, that's all you did, man? Selling books? You know, like you should create more than that, you're going to sell some books. Anyway, in real estate, creating $1 million is not a very difficult thing. Really, the first deal I did, I believe, was $1 million worth of equity. And that's a true deal. Because I bought it very cheap. I bought it at $500,000 less than the guy paid for it, and I thought it was worth at least $1 million more. So you can have nothing and create wealth. And I'm going to give you some examples from some of my students just to really bring it home. But I want to kind of come back here and just bring, how did we get in this deal in the first place? How did we get in this situation in the first place? We got here because of overzealous, greedy mortgage bankers and overzealous, greedy real estate investors who didn't know what they were doing. Now, in the beginning, it worked great. And investors, I found out, there's a couple ways that investors have gotten into it, predominantly. Not the way that I got into the deal, and not the way I'm going to teach you to get into the deal, but a lot of them went in and bought in on early developments when they were first starting. They would just take it off the market. There's a high-rise coming up, there's a condo, here's a deposit, and you sign a purchase agreement, it is yours. If the developer sells 60% of those out, then he goes start another development. Well, most of the properties that were being sold was being bought by investors, speculators, going to pull the property off the market, hold the property, then flip it when the property developed, when the development is completed. That worked good for a while. But it created an artificial demand, and there was an explosion of new developments, and there was no demand. Because the investors created the demand, and it was artificial because they had to eventually sell it to someone, and there was nobody to sell it to. And right at this time, right at this critical time, when the mortgage market started collapsing, there was an acceleration because you had your Wall Street, oil speculators taking and driving oil up to ridiculous prices. Was it $150 a gallon last year? Was that it? A barrel? A tremendous number, when in fact there was no demand. The demand had went down. So the demand they were talking about was a demand for the contracts, for the commodity contract. That's the demand they were talking about, not the demand for usage. They were horning contracts off the market, shooting the prices up, and saying it's a scarcity of them because we're horning them. That shoot the price up. Well, you know what happened on that? Of course, that accelerated the housing, the auto industry crisis, and everything else. So we had a great big collapse. Bam! It's like a big tsunami of 2009. Everything is like, it's a metamorphosis. And the biggest companies, the biggest developers, the 6 biggest real estate companies have all filed bankruptcy. Can you imagine the biggest real estate companies in the world now file bankruptcy? Why? Money. Money is not out there to lend. Banks took these mortgages that they had teaser rates on, 1% and 2%, and they were toxic. And when they were toxic, they sliced them up into different levels, the top 10%, the next 10%, the next 30%, the next 50%, and they sold them all to investors, just sliced them, and just sold those pieces off and bundled them. So they mingled them all together, and in the pool, you had 5 different pools coming out of one pile of mortgages. They took the good mortgages then and the bad ones and mixed them up together. Now you see, you can loan people with not great credit, you can give them loans, but you've got to charge them more money. You charge them 4 points more because the default is 2.5% higher. So therefore, when the defaults happen, when they will happen, you've got 1.5 points to cover yourself. Well, they didn't. They loaned my cousin, my nephew, some money. So when I found they loaned Christopher money at 6.5%, I said, they loaned you this money at 6.5%? He said, yeah, Uncle Herb, I knew we were in trouble. I said, no, we're in trouble. We're in serious trouble. You understand what I mean? Because you wouldn't loan Christopher money at 6.5%. So I was worried about this. Then they took them and sold them all over the world, and everybody brought them to the American dream, and then it started to crumble. It's crumbling, and the U.S. government had to come in and hold it up physically. Because the biggest banks in the world had collapsed and they borrowed the money from you. They owe us money. So some of the things I'm going to tell you about, I'm telling you about it because you are supposed to be the benefactors. Pay that guy. Is that a breather? Let's say a prayer.